Hello and welcome to Art Related Noise, the podcast of the Yin Gallery in Brighton. And my name is Stuart Holdsworth from the Inspiring City blog. And with me is a good friend of the podcast and the blog, in fact, and that's Euan Roberts. Hi, Euan. How are you doing?
Hello. I'm very well, thank you.
I suppose the reason that we're speaking today is because you've got a show coming up at the Yin Gallery. I think it's called "Tell Your Friends You Love Them." So let's start with that, shall we? Tell me about the show.
Yeah, so it's called Tell Your Friends You Love Them. All my previous show titles have been a bit shorter than that. They've been normally 2 words, but for this one I wanted to go with quite a direct message. Like, if you know my art, the message is pretty straightforward. And so this is going to be a selection of 12 new works on paper and a print release as well. So brand new print and loads of new paintings.
And what sort of things will we see in the show?
So I think over 90% of the works feature animals. So off the top of my head, the main print is an image of a bear, which was born out of one of the many lockdowns we've been subjected to and lived through over the past couple of years. So it's a bear on its own on the sofa. It's got its signature fez. It's taken it off, it's sat next to it, and it's got a sort of melancholy, or it's got a sort of sadness to it, but it's about the strength of being alone and the fact that even if people are alone, we're all still connected via love and human experience and friendship, things like that. There'll be crabs. There will be, what else? Bears doing yoga, monkeys riding bicycles, monkeys being kind to snakes, seagulls. That's the first time I've done any seagulls, and there'll be a few more random things going on as well.
So was this born out of lockdown? Was this a thing that you visualized during the lockdown, and you wanted to? I don't know. I mean, the title "Tell Your Friends You Love Them." You sort of hinted at a few of the reasons for that. When people are sort of isolated, and you need to keep those connections strong and just remember people. But is this work reminiscent of that time?
I think it's definitely influenced by that. I was speaking to someone recently, and we were talking about how it's quite hard to remember like lockdown and the start of the pandemic. And I think collectively, because it was such a traumatic event, that we've all deliberately not remembered it in a great detail. Also because of the fact that a lot of people lost their routines. I was listening to something about the neuroscience of how we remember things, and I think a lot of people's routines went straight out the window, and as a result it was really hard to feel just the normal rhythms of life. So a lot of the images I came up with were they were all made during the pandemic, but the whole emphasis of the show and the reason why I want to make art is because I feel like we've been through this really bad thing, and I feel like the repercussions and the fallout is going to carry on for a very long time, even though it seems like we're pretty much back to normal now. And I just want to make art that people see and they feel that, I don't know, it gives them a little bit of hope. It could provide humor. And it's just this kind of say that we're all in this together. No matter how isolated one can feel at times, things like art, big cultural things that we all experience, I feel like they're really important, and it's something that I want to do with my art, is just spread messages of hope and joy and love and positive things in kind of dark times.
I noticed that during the lockdown, you were quite active. Actually, I noticed that you were reaching out a lot. You were creating a lot, and it seemed to me that you were trying to actively do that. You were putting a lot of positivity out there. I remember on your Instagram and the pieces that you were creating. Was that what you were feeling at the time? You were thinking, actually, what, I've got to do something about it. I've got to put some joy in the world. I've got to be able to And it brings, because your colours really, your work is really vibrant, it's very colourful, it's fun to look at, it's enjoyable, it does put a smile on people's face. Is that what you're thinking about at that time?
Yeah, I think it was weird because we had moved to Hastings from London and we'd only just got into our flat, and 2 days later it was the lockdown. So we were in a very unique situation where we were living in a completely different place right by the sea, and our life had been quite chaotic for the past probably 3 or 4 months prior to that time. So it was weirdly a time where we actually felt a lot more balanced and calm despite the news and everything going on and the external world. So for me, I just feel like I have to make art, and I think any artist's practice is it's something they have to do for themselves first, and then the reaction from the world is a secondary thing. It's kind of like that analogy of if you're on a plane and the cabin becomes depressurized, you have to put your own mask on before you help someone else's. I feel like art is like that. Like it helps yourself, helps you be a better person, live a more authentic life, and then it's brilliant if other people can do can kind of feel that feel the same way. But for me, I just had to make art and connect with people as well, because it's so solitary. Like even doing things like this, talking to yourself, I'm just in my studio on my own all the time, as most artists are. So any opportunity to connect with people, be it through social media, doing Zoom calls, we were doing like creative workshops with kids and adults during lockdown. It was all just ways of people reaching out, and it was very simple for me. I would just put a Zoom link up, and everyone brings their own energy, enthusiasm, ideas, and I just kind of turn up and we have conversations, and it was a really nice thing to do.
You mentioned moving down to Hastings there, so obviously that was a big change, and certainly from London, and then getting that sea air during the lockdown actually sounds like a bit of bliss, actually. But recently, you had another big change in the fact that you opened a gallery down there, the big Yin Gallery. So tell me about that, and tell me how all that came about.
Yeah, so we opened the gallery towards the end of August of this year, so it's very new. Again, that's another big change. It kind of came about by accident and just allowing things to happen and saying yes to things. I was looking for a new studio down here, and there's a lot of artists, but one thing that is lacking is studio space. I came across the shop, which was a cake shop at the time, and I immediately thought it would be perfect as an art gallery. So it was kind of working in reverse. It was just saying, well, that's a great space. I've worked for galleries for years prior to becoming a full-time artist, and I wanted a place to show my own art and make it. So I decided just to go for it. Me and my partner Ruth, she runs a lot of the gallery as well, organizes a lot of the infrastructure, and it's really an extension of my studio and a way for me to work with artists, which is something, again, because artists are in isolation so much, it's nice to have people come down, bring their work, have conversations, show it to the public, and yeah, and just be able to show my own art in my own gallery is a pretty cool thing.
It's pretty cool. I mean, and I suppose you're still in that sort of that early stage at the moment, aren't you? Of figuring out how all the business side of stuff works, and how people are receiving it and stuff. So how has it been for the first few months? How have you found being a gallery owner?
It's not easy. It's yeah, there's a lot of a gallery is a really funny thing because it presents as one thing. You see this perfect space and beautiful art hanging on the walls, and then everything behind the scenes is just chaotic and a giant mess. Like where the art, like if you see the basement of the gallery, there's just cardboard everywhere, bubble wrap. It's the same with most galleries in my experience. Um, and it's like, yeah, you just see the little top of the pyramid, which is the beautiful art in situ, but then there's so much stuff, so many conversations, messages getting it there, dealing with artists, framers, doing PR, getting people in the space. It's been a lot, but it's been really well received here. Like everyone's been so kind, and it's a nice way just to meet people. Like in a small town like this, it's I think the population's about 90,000, so it's not a huge place, and they just know where I am, and I kind of like that. This where each it's kind of like I don't know, like Postman Pat or something, where you see Postman Pat, and it's like that's the shop, that's where something happens, that's where that person is, and it kind of turns into that kind of feeling. And I just like the fact that that's the art gallery, that's where I make art, that's where you can find me, and it's kind of a simple thing, really, but it's been going well, and I feel like the galleries that I love, they just keep going, they just keep putting all their effort into doing really exciting shows. So that's what we're going to do.
I suppose with going back to another gallery now, Enter Gallery, of course, in Brighton, so just down the coast, if you like. But that is somewhere. Not only are they going to have a show exhibiting your work, but in terms of coming full circle, if you like, you used to work there. That was one of the galleries that you subtly sort of referenced earlier when you said that you worked in a few galleries. So tell me about your time at Enter, and have you learned anything from that experience to working in your own gallery now?
Yeah, definitely. I think you just pick up so much stuff seeing how a gallery runs, and it is quite funny like going back and showing my work there. I kind of always knew it was going to happen. It's not like a great surprise, but I think it's like a time perspective thing. You just keep doing something and keep building it gradually, and you have faith in it, and you just trust the process, and then I think at some point it will come back around. And it's funny to be on that other side of things now and be going there as an artist and showing my work. But yeah, I think it was the relationships with the artists that you make when you work there. That's what really inspired me to push my own art and to really go for it. Meeting a lot of people and just the excitement of when new work arrives and getting it framed and getting it up on the wall and seeing people buy it, and then they come back in a few weeks or months later and they bought another piece, and you kind of see the whole relationship of them and the art, but the artist isn't present. So it's quite interesting being present as the artist and seeing every stage of the whole journey, going from making it to showing it to selling it, and also even like collecting it and working with artists. But yeah, it's great, and they've got a beautiful space, the heart of the lanes, and it's nice just going back to where I'm from and showing my art there, and kind of just having people I've known for years who still live in Brighton come to see it. It's a really beautiful thing, I think.
Well, there's an element of coming home there, isn't there? Certainly, when you've had such a personal experience, not only with the gallery but with living in Brighton, people that you know there. Uh, it's a great experience, isn't it? All those friendly faces, familiar faces that you see, and there you are. You've got your work, show. Is it a bit like that? Is it a bit like coming home?
Yeah, it is. It's weird because I haven't actually lived in Brighton like as an adult properly for years. So it's still every time I go back there, I feel, especially coming from Hastings, it's like, oh my God, this place is so busy, it's so big. But at the time when I grew up as a kid, you think it's really small and you just look elsewhere. You look to London or wherever. But it is such a naturally creative place, and I hope it doesn't lose that, because I know it's hard to be an artist, definitely in London, but I feel like the cost of living in studios is what really pushes artists out, and it would be a shame if Brighton couldn't sustain like future artists to live there and make work and open galleries and do things, because I know it's very expensive like everywhere in the south coast.
It is, yeah. No, it's a common problem, isn't it? I think with studio space, and I suppose that's where other areas start opening up, don't they? And I suppose St Leonard's would be ideal if there was the studio space there, or
Yeah.
I think we were saying earlier that there's a lot of artists moving there, but actually the studio space isn't particularly prevalent.
Mm. I guess it's good. It forces you to adapt. And if I had just slotted into a big studio space, I probably wouldn't have opened a gallery. So it can be a good thing to force to adapt to situations
and taking the
live.
chances as they present themselves, right? You know, say you said that was an opportunity that you took, and you must have thought, well, okay, fine, let's give it a go. which is quite a big decision, really, isn't it? But I wonder if did it happen quite quickly? That, by the way, was it quite a quick choice?
The initial choice was really quick, but it took us so long to actually get into the space.
Can you imagine?
Because we said yes, I think in around November, and then there was a lot of building work because all of the buildings by the sea just get such damp problems and things. And then there was loads of lockdowns at the start of this year, so it kind of pushed us right back to summer. But again, we weren't in a giant rush. I thought summer was a really nice time to open because there was such a buzz and people hadn't been to galleries for so long. There hadn't been any openings or events. It was great to get everyone down, and I feel like that excitement is still really carrying on. People missing being in art galleries.
Just going back to the show that you've got in Enter, and you've got the title tell your friends you love them. There was a quote that you said. I think you said that your work is. I think you're fascinated by the insignificant.
Yeah.
Are we? Can you expand on that quote a little bit and tell us more about what you mean by that and how that might possibly translate into the work that you'll be showing at Enter?
I think it's an obsession I have with. It's almost like visual puns or one-liners, or if you look at some like surrealism or like absurdist comedy, that's where all the intersection of all that is where you find my art. And it's really small things. It can be slight juxtapositions. For example, in the show, if you ever describe art, it's very unspectacular, but there's a piece that I really like where it's a seagull and it's holding some false teeth in its beak. And for me, that's all the paintings. There's like a before and after, and with painting, you only get the present thing that you've presented. So I like the fact that with all of these things, seemingly mundane things put together, they create a narrative that is quite unusual. Like, where did the seagull get the false teeth? Is someone out of shot, like chasing after some seagull? Did the seagull find them in a rubbish dump? What's it going to do with them? And I feel like that's the amazing thing about painting, is you don't have to sum everything up nicely. If that was a film, it wouldn't make any sense. It would just upset people. But if it's a painting, they just they fill in the rest of the gaps themselves. And I think that's sort of what I meant by that phrase. It's just creating a feeling and not being too prescriptive, not telling people what to feel or think.
I suppose that's what a lot of people like, because a lot of people have your work now, and I suppose you might have had an idea about what was in your mind when you created that piece, but other people will be making their own stories. So there's probably thousands of differing stories from people that have your work, which is probably completely different to what you had in your mind, but that is a story that they've made up. So equally good, I suppose, that all these different imaginations are being, I don't know, enchanted by the walls.
Yeah, I think if people definitely, when you talk to them about the art, they see something completely different. And quite often it's not what I intended, but that's the thing with art. There's no, my intention and their interpretation, neither of them are correct really, because it's just the sum of all my experiences and my influences and versus theirs, and neither is correct. I don't think you can read a painting incorrectly, and I feel like whatever people feel is good. It's a valid response. The only thing you don't want is people just to not care either way. I think you'd rather someone loves it or hates it than just it feels like it's just wallpaper or something.
Euan, thanks very much. We're going to leave it there, but thanks very much for talking to us today on art-related noise.
My pleasure. Thanks very much, Stuart. Really appreciate it, mate.